Zealotes, thank you for your love and support. I appreciate you all. Wonders they say shall never cease to happen. They told us that epic fury was over. They have won. They said it was a short excursion. They said there was nothing left to hit. They said they've sunk all the ships of Iran. So there's nothing to strike at. But this is where it gets so interesting. As we hear these people on TV telling us things are okay, backdoor, there's something else that is happening. The war is their war. Yet now, according to the report that is coming, they are trying to force other people to make this war other people's war instead of their war, because things are getting tougher day in, day out. Already, we heard that they have never gone to fight a war like this before. This one they never expected. Like the Oga Tarif came out to tell the whole world that they didn't know that Iran is having this missiles capability. And if they shouldn't have done that, they would have been targeted. We'll be listening to an interview in the Gulf state. Now, according to what is coming out, people are being pressured. They are giving pressure to the Gulf states to join this war. They are trying to make it a Middle East war instead of a war between them and Iran. But the people are saying that they are not ready to participate.
Of course, Lindsey Graham saying Saudi Arabia will face consequences if it doesn't join the USA-Israel war. Thank you so much, Dr. Abdulaziz Al-Gashian, for coming on Going Underground. So apart from Lebanon, Gaza, all those countries, GCC countries getting targeted the most. Dubai, the main target. You've been targeted. Riyadh's been targeted. I have to ask you, are GCC countries involved in the targeting of Iran? Because we had a former head of intelligence of the U.S. Pacific Fleet on Going Underground the other day, and he said he was surprised that the GCC countries were not allowing the targeting of Iran from their territory.
Well, firstly, Afshan, thank you very much for having me. I think there will always be that, not only speculation, but there will always be that kind of intent to try to assert that there is this GCC-Israel axis. A lot of the times people want to try to create that discourse in order to impose a particular reality on the ground. And I think what is happening right now is basically that the GCC states are making sure that they don't want to be part of this war. And one of the ways that they don't, one of the reasons why they don't want to be part of this war is because they believe, and as I'm sure you heard loads of times, this is not their war. And they have lobbied much against it anyway. But they understand very much that they're really being pressured to really join the war in order for many people to assert and say, you see, these GCC states are fighting side by side with Israel. We have now created de facto a new region. The new region is here, the new regional order. And this is something that I think many people will find allergic to because no one wants anything imposed upon them. So I think even listening to some people in DC and other places, they're literally saying things like, well, Saudi Arabia is offensively entered into the mix. And I have to say, this is very difficult to see. I find this very uncredible, and I find this also putting the GCC states in more of harm's way. So it's very concerning to see this disinformation campaign that is really taking place.
Yeah, there's so much misinformation about. Clearly, I mean, the GCC countries are imposing different types of censorship to try and get a handle on it. I mean, what is it, the Muslim Brotherhood's power overseas? Because does it shock you to see the kind of lies told about the GCC whilst you've been bombed in Riyadh? Of course, we've been bombed here in Dubai. This kind of disinformation, and I'm being accused of being a patsy for the UAE government here. When I go, no, this is just not true. There are rumors that there are capital flight limits already being instituted. All sorts of disinformation.
Well, unfortunately, anybody studying the GCC or studying kind of the Gulf, and particularly Saudi Arabia, will know that they've always had an uphill battle with their narrative. And let me just also say this. I mean, we're not also perfect. I mean, we are, we're not immune from mistakes. But a lot of the times it's how people frame these mistakes and kind of how they amplify them. And unfortunately, just to illustrate to you how silly these things are and how unserious these things are, a few weeks ago, after the rift of the Saudi-UAE rift that took place because of Yemen at the end of last year and early this year, Saudi Arabia was accused of siding with Iran. I mean, people don't remember that, and siding with the Muslim Brotherhood. And all of a sudden now people are saying, well, Saudi's actually joined in the fight against Iran. So you see that there is a genuine just unseriousness about the narrative of the GCC. And this is really an instrumentalization of this narrative. And also, let me just say this, a big part of this is also something we have to really start looking at, looking in the mirror and really trying to think about, well, why was there a vacuum? Not a security vacuum, but a discursive vacuum that is taking place here. So I think one of the things that are coming out even from this war is that I think there is even a notion growing inside the GCC by saying, listen, we've found ourselves being boxed in right now by other people. And I have to say, Afshan, one of the fascinating things to see here is the materialization of language into policy right before our very eyes. Tweet by tweet, statement by statement, it's taking place. And so there are people that are saying, holy moly, what is going on here, man? We need to start really thinking about how we're being narrated elsewhere. So I think, there's all these silly things and accusations about you and about me. And this is just part and parcel of being part of the Gulf and in the Gulf. So a very warm welcome to you being in the Gulf, I have to say.
Well, the cat is certainly convinced behind you of what you say. Yeah, it was difficult to know what was going on as regards to the rift between Saudi Arabia and UAE. But let's get, back obviously to the case at hand, which is there a place, there was for Switzerland during the Second World War, is there a place for neutrality at a time like this when it's clear that we've had a genocide that we witnessed in Gaza? And who is benefiting from these lies and the misinformation?
In my opinion, I've heard some of the commentary and analysis by Gulf colleagues, and they assert that they're trying to be neutral. In my opinion, I don't think we are neutral. I actually think we were lobbying very hard not to have this war. I don't think this makes us neutral, in my opinion.
With the bases, isn't that the question? I mean, if GCC countries had said, right, not only can they not use the bases, obviously some of the bases are on US sovereign land, as in Bahrain, but in Saudi Arabia and the UAE, they could have said, no, you have to go if you start a war in this region that in an attempt, well, we don't even know why the war is taking place in one sense.
Well, I'll have to say this regarding the bases. This is a result of really the Gulf War, and this has to be contextualized also. And I think what there is that now there is this discussion about security, and in my opinion, I think the Iranian retaliation probably reinforced the notion that probably the bases will probably be here because to create more options in the future. And I think so. This is one of the pull and push of the internationalization.
This is the reason why. I mean, there's a headline here. Aramco, and this isn't disinformation because it's coming from Aramco, the Saudi Arabian state oil company. Aramco warns of catastrophic consequences from Iran war. This wouldn't be happening if there weren't bases in Saudi Arabia, clearly. And it wouldn't be attacks on Dubai if the UAE had forged a BRICS summit in Dubai with their Iranian counterparts. Of course, they're both members of BRICS.
Exactly. No, I think, in my opinion, that is not part of the picture. That's part of the picture. That's not the complete part of the picture. The reason being is because I think they made it very clear that the overarching strategy is to raise the cost of the war, is to globalize the response and make sure that basically the United States will start to feel some of the pressure and therefore scale down their operation. So it's not about bases.
Well, clearly, and I think clearly that's the reason. But Iran isn't going to attack India, even though Modi was hugging Netanyahu the other day because of BRICS, because of the North-South corridor, and because India doesn't host U.S. bases.
Well, India is very much aligned with Netanyahu. And
Because it's the
but
bases
this
that
is
matter.
not.
It's the bases that matter, isn't it? It's the physical infrastructure of the bases that make a country a target. So Britain finds itself targeted because of its Akrotiri base used by the United States in Cyprus.
Yeah, I find the fact that with some of these accusations that they're using the bases, or it's because of the essence of these bases, a legitimization of some of the tactics that they would use to escalate the war. I mean, let's not forget, one of the reasons why they wanted to have relations with Saudi Arabia and other of the Gulf countries, while knowing that the bases were actually there in the first place. So, the basis seems to be something of a problem that came later on. Moreover, let me say this. During the Iran-Israel war, the 12-day war, last June, the position that the GCC states found themselves in was actually, while concerning, but it was actually proved to be stable and proved to be strong because of the statements that they made. They condemned the Israeli strikes, but, the American bases were not used then, and also when the United States did attack in June 2025, the retaliation wasn't really, it was a telegraphed kind of retaliation on Qatar, which was mediating. So I think the bases and the reference to the bases seems to be something they are trying to legitimize these mad dog tactics that they're using. And I think, let me just also add this, in my estimation, while there is a disinformation campaign coming from some people in the United States and some people in Israel, because this is to answer your question, some people, this Netanyahu group and the pro-war lobby in the United States are the ones that are benefiting from this chaos, and what they want is to create some sort of anti-Iran axis in the region that is an alignment between Netanyahu and Saudi Arabia, which Saudi Arabia does not want to be a part of. But there's also a disinformation campaign coming from some extremists in Iran. And all of a sudden, we in the Gulf are the recipients of disinformation campaigns, and basically people are talking over our heads. And so it is very difficult to be in the middle of other people's wars. And we are basically, Afshan, the front line of other people's wars, a war that we do not want to be part of. So to be part of this kind of position, people will try to narrate the way they want to narrate and legitimize their approach. And so I think it's very difficult. And also, let me say this, lies are very bad, but half-truths are far more dangerous. And this is what's taking place in this disinformation campaign. They're using these half-truths here and there. They're using these bits and bobs, disframed statements, decontextualized statements to try to create a narrative in the Gulf and narrate who we are in a very, very difficult time. So I think it's important to be challenged by these questions. It's important, but because I think the response, it helps explain more the situation and the complexity of the situation.
Dr. Abdulaziz Al-Ghashyan, I'll stop you there. More from the Senior Non-Resident Fellow at the Gulf International Forum after this break. Welcome back to Going Underground. I'm still here with the Senior Non-Resident Fellow at the Gulf International Forum, Dr. Abdulaziz Al-Ghashyan. Dr. Abdulaziz, we were talking about the disinformation war, about this wider war in this region, this global war, as it were. I was asking about the bases, and you said that shouldn't be the focus of the question. Of course, Lindsey Graham saying Saudi Arabia will face consequences if it doesn't join the USA-Israel war.
I've also shown you a video whereby a senator is coming out claiming that they are not happy that the Arab nations are not participating. So it's a lesson for us in Africa that these bases that we have here, and we think that they are there to protect us, when they finally use these things to cause trouble, they will run away and try to force us to fight this war. This is how they always win their war. Proxy. But the Gulf states are standing firm and they are saying they are not ready. Because when you listen to what the man is saying, even what is coming out of DC isn't good, because these people are trying to make sure they now wash their hands and turn these Arabs against themselves. And this is exactly what they are doing with the bases that they have here in Africa. Like what they have done in Nigeria, that other nations are saying it's not good, especially with the youth, we are condemning it. When things become difficult, they will turn us against ourselves and we'll be fighting while they sit somewhere. But the Arab nations or the Gulf states are acting very smart here, because they are saying they don't want to be involved in this war. Even though they are citing how they are destroying their properties and other things, they still do not want to be involved. These people are trying to instigate them through every angle so that this war will not be against other people, and they'll say, you see, even the Arabs are fighting among themselves, but they are very quick in noticing what these people want to use them for, and they are washing their hands. We need to understand that nobody has you the African interest at heart. We must have our own interest at heart. They made it look as if with them we are secured. Even they themselves are not able to defend themselves. Things are not easy for them. Iran is bombarding here and there to the point that they are now calling on their allies to come and help them make sure they open the Strait of Hormuz. But they were the same people who told us that their military were going, or their navy were going there to open it and escort tankers. They even posted certain things on X, and finally they have to go and what? Delete them, because the navy refused to, and they claim it is very risky. So we Africans watching this, I think our leader, instead of trying to be in partnership with these people, we should rather use that time to partner among ourselves as Africans, build ourselves. Iran was under sanction for a very long time. How did Iran build? How did Iran get to where it is? Nations that are more powerful teaming up against one nation, and they're finding it so difficult. If Africa will continue to be watching and talking like we did 40 years ago when they sanctioned Iran, we will never get anywhere. Like Captain Ibrahim Traore gave us a very good message. This is the time we all need to build ourselves. And if Africa will be saved, it is you and I, the youth. We need to unite like the Gulf nations are uniting to say, no, we don't want to be involved. We don't want to get ourselves involved. You went and looked for your trouble. Please deal with your trouble. No matter what the situation might be, after everything is done, I know very well that these people will find a way of rebuilding themselves. It is better to rebuild infrastructure than to go into war with Iran, because nobody knows that Iran is this strong. So when the Gulf nations should sit back and look, they are saying that no, it will be a very big mistake on their part to try to go into war with Iran. So everybody is washing his or her hands away, because these people are trying to do that so that they'll push these people and go and sit somewhere as if this is not their problem. And then they will not be using their most dangerous weapon to not be spreading all sort of things that are not true. So this is the time Africa, we need to unite. We need to come together. This is the time we should love ourselves the more, instead of allowing other people to always come into the continent to be dividing and using us for their own benefit. We have always served these people's interests, and that must come to an end. And let's build ourselves and let's unite together to fight for the total liberation of the African. We are the only ones that can set ourselves free. United we stand, divided we fall, and united we keep standing forever and ever. The greatest enemy of the African is mental slavery. So let's decolonize ourselves from mental slavery. Let's keep sharing to educate our brothers and sisters. Together we make Africa great for ourselves and the next generations that are going to come. So that's the latest around the world, Middle East, and in Gulf states.